Namaskar, good evening and welcome to Sansad TV. You're watching the news with your host Kriti Mishra. Get ready for your daily dose of national and international developments, minus noise and cacophony. First up, the headlines this Thursday evening. Efforts to remove AFSPA for entire Northeastern region, says Prime Minister at rally in Assam. Last 8 years have seen 80% reduction in violence in the region. Ukraine war has revealed the significance of self-reliance in the defence sector, says Rajnath Singh at Naval Commanders Conference, emphasises synergy between the three wings of India's armed forces. Parliamentary Committee on Finance to summon representatives of tech companies Google, Facebook, Twitter and Amazon on competitive conduct. Severe heat wave warning for 5 states. Mercury crosses 45 degrees in many places in North India. Power crisis deepens in many states. Coal Minister allays concerns over coal availability. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres arrives in Ukraine for talks with President Zelensky. Visits war devastated areas in Kiev. On to our Flash News segment now. Kamal Nath steps down as Madhya Pradesh Congress Legislature Party leader. Dr. Govind Singh is the new leader of opposition. India's antitrust body launches raids against 2 domestic sellers of online retail giant Amazon over accusations of violating competition laws. India makes FCRA clearances mandatory for tie-ups with China's Confucius institutes. PM Modi to inaugurate Global Patidar Business Summit on April 29th. Jammu and Kashmir Samba becomes first district in India to cover 100% households under PMJAY Sehat scheme. Delhi Police Crime Branch arrests key accused in Jahangirpuri violence from West Bengal. Petroleum Minister Hardeep Singh Puri says fuel will be cheaper if opposition ruled states cut taxes on petrol instead of cutting taxes on imported liquor. Flagship telemedicine scheme eSanjeevani records 3.5 lakh teleconsultations on April 26th and 27th. Tamil Nadu government announces plan to establish textile city on outskirts of Chennai. External Affairs Ministry says time not right to resume issue of tourist visas for China due to COVID-19 pandemic. And Prime Minister Modi on Thursday said efforts are on to remove AFSPA completely from the Northeastern region. He was addressing a peace, unity and development rally in Difu in Assam. The Prime Minister said law and order situation has improved in the last 8 years. During his visit, the Prime Minister laid the foundation stone for veterinary science and agriculture colleges, as well as a model government college in Karbi Anglong. He also launched more than 2,000 Amrit Sarovar projects across Assam.
3 दशक से ये लागू था। स्थितियों में सुधार न होने के कारण पहले की सरकारें इसको बार-बार आगे बढ़ाती रही, लेकिन बीते वर्षों में हालात को ऐसे संभाला गया कि आज असम के 23 जिलों से AFSPA हटा दिया गया है.
And Prime Minister Modi on Thursday inaugurated a cancer treatment centre in Dibrugarh district of Assam. He inspected the facilities and equipment at the centre located at the Assam Medical College and Hospital. The Assam Cancer Centre Foundation has been built in a joint venture between state government and the Tata Trust. The Dibrugarh Centre is one of the 17 medical centres being developed by it. And moving on, the Weather Department on Thursday warned of a heat wave for parts of North and Central India for the next 5 days. Similar warnings were issued for East India for next 3 days. The Indian Met Department also predicted rain and thunderstorms with lightning and gusty winds over northern east parts of the country. The IMD has also forecast dust storms over Punjab, Haryana and around national capital, as well as parts of Uttar Pradesh and Rajasthan. Delhi on Wednesday recorded a blistering maximum temperature of 44.2 degrees Celsius. A yellow alert has been sounded for the city, which directs authorities to stay vigilant. Sweltering heat in the city has forced the government to increase supply of drinking water every day to 1,000 million gallons against 935 million gallons.
इंटायर मार्च भी देखें तो बहुत सारे ऐसे दिन रहे जिसमें जो तापमान थे वो 6 से लेकर 8 डिग्री तक ज़्यादा रिकॉर्ड किए गए और जो इस बार अगर पिछले 10 सालों से कंपेयर करें तो इस साल जो मार्च का महीना था वो वार्म रहा। कई जगह जो टेम्परेचर जो है वो थोड़े रिकॉर्ड भी हुए, जैसे कि पटियाला में था। पटियाला में पिछले 70 सालों में जो इस बार मार्च के महीने में सबसे ज़्यादा जो तापमान वो रिकॉर्ड किया गया था।
Meanwhile, a potent combination of sweltering summer and acute cold shortage are triggering blackouts across many parts of the country. Many states are struggling to manage record demand for electricity and low feedstock at power plants. From Jammu and Kashmir to Andhra Pradesh, consumers are facing power cuts ranging from 2 hours to 8 hours. After the hottest March on record, a large part of the country is seeing extreme heat in April. Total electricity shortage in the country has hit 623 million units, surpassing the total shortage in March. Peak power demand, or the highest supply in the day, was 200.65 gigawatt on April 27th, while peak power shortage was 10.29 gigawatt. Uttar Pradesh has 3,000 megawatt deficit. Against the demand of around 23,000 megawatt, the supply is just 20,000 megawatt, resulting in load shedding in rural areas and smaller towns. And responding to the reports of coal shortage, Union Coal Minister Prahlad Joshi has said the central government is monitoring the situation.
मैं इतना ही कहना चाहता हूं, कोई घबराने का जरूरत नहीं, कोई पैनिक होने का जरूरत नहीं। जहां तक स्टॉक का सवाल है, 25 अप्रैल को 2 दिन पहले का सिचुएशन जो हमारे पास आंकड़ा है, वो थर्मल पावर प्लांट में 21.55 मिलियन टन का स्टॉक अवेलेबल है। डे टू डे बेसिस हम कोल बेचते रहते हैं, इसीलिए हमारे पास जो डे टू डे बेचने के लिए हमारे पास 72.5 मिलियन टन हमारे पास स्टॉक है।
And moving on now, Defence Minister Rajnath Singh on Thursday underscored the significance of self-reliance in the context of the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. Calling the Indian Navy a pioneer in self-reliant India initiative, he said it should continue to promote maritime trade, security and national prosperity. The Defence Minister was addressing the concluding session of the Naval Commanders Conference in Delhi. He commended the sea warriors for their professionalism and dedication with which they continue to perform the duty of safeguarding the maritime interests of the nation. And the Indian force is preparing for intense and small duration operations at short notice, Chief of Air Staff Air Chief Marshal B.R. Chaudhary said on Thursday. Addressing a seminar, he said the IAF is also getting ready for short, swift wars and long-drawn standoff, what has been seen in eastern Ladakh. Air Chief Marshal Chaudhary added that the evolving geopolitical scenario mandates the IAF to be operationally and logistically responsive at all times.
The current geopolitical situation necessitates Indian efforts to prepare for intense and small duration operations at a short notice. This new paradigm of high intensity operations coupled with minimal build-up time would require major changes in terms of op logistics.
And in other news now, on the 70 years of the diplomatic relations between India and Japan, Prime Minister Modi on Thursday expressed satisfaction over the deepening ties between the two nations. He said relations between the two countries have strengthened in every field, including strategic, economic and public relations. The Ministry of Home Affairs says the security situation in northeastern states has improved significantly since 2014. According to a ministry report, militancy in the states reduced by 80% in the last 8 years. Casualties of security forces have come down by 75% and civilian deaths by 99%. The Finance Ministry is releasing 2,78,000 crore to the states as goods and services tax compensation for financial year 2020-21. Gst Compensation for 8 of the 10 months of the financial year has already been released to the states. External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar on Thursday met Foreign Minister of Guyana, Hilton Todd. Both sides emphasized deepening of cooperation between the two countries. And External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar is on an official visit to Bangladesh. He is expected to call on Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina and hold bilateral talks with his Bangladeshi counterpart. The purpose of the visit is to lay the groundwork for Prime Minister Hasina's visit to India. 2 terrorists were killed in an encounter with security forces in Jammu and Kashmir's Pulwama district. The encounter was triggered by a search operation during which the terrorists opened fire on them. Delhi University Vice-Chancellor Yogesh Singh has constituted an 8-member committee to review the decline in the enrollment of scheduled castes and scheduled tribes. The committee will be headed by Pankaj Arora, Dean of Students' Welfare Department. And Health Minister Mansukh Mandavia has said the decision to vaccinate children with the anti-COVID vaccine will be based on the recommendations by the National Technical Advisory Group on Immunization. The group is meeting on Friday. India witnessed 3,000 daily cases on Thursday for the first time in the last 46 days. In the last 24 hours, 3,303 new cases were reported. And the Parliamentary Committee on Finance will summon many big tech companies to learn their views on anti-competitive business practices. Officials of big tech companies like Google, Amazon, Facebook, Twitter will be called. The committee will meet next on this issue in May. Members of the Parliamentary Standing Committee on Finance discussed the issue in detail on Thursday after a presentation by the Competition Commission of India, which is probing the matter. CCI said it is setting up a digital markets and data unit to effectively tackle anti-competitive practices of large tech companies. A bill is also in the works to amend the CCI Act. We'll take a short break here. On the other side, an exhibition on immersive art that mixes technology and vivid light displays.
Itihasa is about our legacy. Itihasa is about our Sanskriti. And that Itihasa is also exemplified in our monuments. हम जानेंगे नेशनल मॉन्यूमेंट्स अथॉरिटी के बारे में, जानेंगे नेशनल मॉन्यूमेंट्स के बारे में.
प्रत्येक स्मारक भारत की स्मृति पुस्तिका है. Every monument is a memory book of the nation, people and society etched in the stones. इसलिए उसकी रक्षा करना उतना ही जरूरी है जितना हमें अपनी सरहद की रक्षा करना है. सरहद की रक्षा करके भारत के शरीर की रक्षा होती है. मॉन्यूमेंट्स की रक्षा करके भारत के मन की रक्षा होती है.
डॉक्टर विवेक देबरॉय के साथ इतिहास में इस बार देखिए राष्ट्रीय महत्व के स्मारक आज रात 9:30 बजे सिर्फ संसद टीवी पर.
Welcome back. You're watching the news. Now let's take a look at all the latest developments from war front in Ukraine. Dozens of heavy Russian bombs destroyed a hospital inside a steel plant in the southern Ukrainian city of Mariupol. Ukrainian authorities said hundreds of servicemen and civilians were sheltering in the plant. Russian heavy bombers and fighter jets bombed the plant last night, hitting the hospital. German lawmakers voted in favor of sending heavy weapons to Ukraine, a symbolic decision that reflects the government's change of course on the issue. Thursday's non-binding motion received support from governing parties and the main opposition union bloc of ex-Chancellor Merkel. Germany had initially refused to send any offensive weapons to Ukraine and later refused to send heavy equipment like armored vehicles. Ukrainian prosecutors are investigating 10 Russian soldiers suspected of committing war crimes in Bucha, where bodies in civilian clothes were found dead after Moscow's troops retreated. Ukrainian authorities said 10 servicemen belong to the 64th Motorized Infantry Brigade of Russian Armed Forces, part of 35th Army. Russia's Gazprom claimed that Poland is still buying Russian gas in Germany and that reverse supplies to Poland via the Yamal pipeline amount to around 30 million cubic meters per day. Gazprom halted gas supplies to Poland and Bulgaria on Wednesday over their refusal to pay in rubles and threatened to do so to others as well. US President Joe Biden will ask Congress for new funds to support Ukraine's military, as well as new legal tools to tighten sanctions and siphon assets from Russian oligarchs. He's expected to put forward a proposal for lawmakers to hand his administration new capabilities to let US officials seize more oligarchs' assets and give the cash from those seizures to Ukraine. The US has accused Russia of planning to short-circuit Ukrainian democracy by forcing the government from power and dismantling local authorities. And moving on, United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres on Thursday toured areas outside Kiev that is left devastated after the Russian offensive on the Ukrainian capital. With the war now in its third month, the UN chief visited both Bucha and Irpin that have seen some of the most horrific attacks of the war. Guterres said he has urged Russia to cooperate with International Criminal Court over alleged war crimes committed by its troops. On Wednesday, Guterres visited Moscow and held talks with Russian President Vladimir Putin. He briefed Turkish President Erdogan about his talks with Putin. Guterres expressed support for Turkey's diplomatic efforts to end the conflict. Now news from other parts of the world. And talking about COVID-19 pandemic and vaccination, Moderna is asking US regulators to authorize low doses of its COVID-19 vaccine for children younger than 6 years. It is a long-awaited move towards potentially opening shots of millions of tots by summer. Moderna has submitted data that it hopes will prove that 2 of its low-dose shots can protect babies, toddlers and preschoolers. The 2 kit shot is expected to safely protect children who would, however, over time need additional doses. COVID-19 free for a long time, Taiwan is now facing its worst outbreak with over 11,000 new cases reported on Thursday. Its government announced 11,353 new cases along with 2 deaths at daily press briefing on Thursday. 99.7% cases in the current outbreak either had no symptoms or had mild symptoms. Taiwan has been relatively lucky throughout the pandemic, but also maintained strict border controls with a 2-week quarantine on arrival for all visitors. China's capital Beijing has already ordered 3 rounds of mass testing this week for the virus. The capital city has moved more swiftly than many Chinese cities to impose restrictions, while case numbers remain low and scale of the outbreak is still manageable. The goal is to avoid the sort of sweeping measures imposed on Shanghai, where the Omicron variant has torn through the city of 25 million. And the world's first vertiport for flying taxis and drones is up and running in England. It will be several years before the vehicles are operational, but organisers say it's important that the infrastructure is in place for when those flights are possible.
This unusual facility is the urban airport built as the world's first vertiport. It's not just for drones. Hubs like these will be used by flying taxis, transporting passengers on short journeys from city to city. It is designed very much like an airport with a lounge, security gates and a takeoff area. This one has been dubbed Air One and could one day be home to electric vertical takeoff and landing vehicles. The company behind this vertiport plans to build 200 of them across the world over the next 5 years. While this one is billed as fully operational, the flying taxis are of course not. But the idea is to get these mini airports in place for electric flying vehicles when they start taking off. This one has been built in a car park in Coventry city centre and took 11 weeks to construct. And it's just as quick to take down, an important feature for this emerging technology. Hyundai brand Supernal is one of the companies interested in operating from hubs like this. It launched its concept flying taxi vehicle, the SA1, at the Las Vegas Tech Show CES in 2020. Urban airports will also be home to drones, from autonomous delivery drones to machines flown by the emergency services. At the moment, legislation allows drones to be flown only within their sight line. But a change in the law could expand so that they can fly them further from their base. Air One is operational for the next 4 to 6 weeks, with all the permissions and certifications in place to operate drone flights. Whether it stays open longer will depend on whether services are in demand. Bureau Report, Sansad TV.
And space lovers and sky watchers are in for a treat as 4 planets in our solar system, Venus, Jupiter, Mars and Saturn, will be visible in a diagonal line, giving us a beautiful view of the aligned planets. The alignment will be visible for the next few days and you will be able to see the 4 planets in a diagonal line in the east-southeast sky before dawn. That's not all. You could also get to see a rare phenomena wherein Venus and Jupiter will appear to collide during the early hours of 30th April 2022. NASA says the planets only appear to move closer or further apart in the sky as our view of them across the solar system changes from month to month. An exhibition that mixes art and technology and vivid light displays is opening in London. Set in a former underground car park, the show is designed like a gloomy maze where it's easy to get lost in the darkness.
Future Shock is an exhibition dedicated to immersive art. 16 installations blur the lines between physical and virtual artworks, all at the crossroads of art and technology. The exhibition is designed like a maze where you get lost as you wander through the dark rooms. One of the installations explores the different forms of columns with rotating mirrors. In a pitch black room, lasers scan the floor and walls. The installation by United Visual Artists is made of 4 kinetic sculptures projecting single color planes of light. Further down, another installation explores a world populated by digital humans in a desert-like environment. After scanning a QR code on the wall, visitors are invited to show a web page to a machine next to each screen to start new videos. Other highlights include Vigil, an installation made up of an ice block with the imprint of a hand hung in front of a round screen displaying videos of landscapes. Most installations don't necessarily have an artistic message, but rather experiment with technology. Bureau Report, Sansad TV.
And in more news from across the globe. Food carton stall owners in Jakarta on Thursday welcomed the start of a ban on palm oil exports by the president, saying they hope this would bring down the price of cooking oil, which has spiked in the past year. Indonesia says the ban will be lifted when the price of bulk cooking oil comes down. Bulk cooking oil is being offered at 19 to 20,000 rupiah a litre in Jakarta's traditional markets. NATO Secretary General has said that Finland and Sweden will be warmly welcomed if they apply to join the alliance. Speaking to media at the European Parliament, he said every nation had a right to choose their own path and Russia's attempted intimidation just demonstrates how Russia is not respecting the basic right of every nation. Nearly 1,000 trade unions in Sri Lanka staged one-day nationwide strike, demanding the immediate resignation of the government, including President Gotabaya Rajapaksa and Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa, over failure to tackle the country's unprecedented economic crisis. Sri Lanka's foreign exchange crisis has meant that the country can't pay for imports of staple food and fuel, leading to acute shortages and very high prices. 5 miners died after 2 methane explosions in a coal mine in southern Poland. 7 other members remain missing and are still trapped, according to the Polish Prime Minister. More than 20 people, including rescuers, were hospitalized with severe burns. Doctors at the local hospital said some victims have life-threatening injuries, including burns to their lungs and large areas of their bodies. Israel came to a standstill on Thursday for an annual ritual honoring the 6 million Jews murdered during the Holocaust. People halted wherever they were while they were walking, or the drivers stopped their cars to get out of the vehicles as people bowed their heads in memory of the victims of the Nazi genocide. Ceremonies were also planned throughout the day at Israel's National Holocaust Memorial, Parliament and elsewhere. Israel was founded in 1948 as a sanctuary for Jews in the wake of the Holocaust. Now all the action from the world of sports. In badminton, star Indian shuttler PV Sindhu notched up a straight game over lowly ranked Yu Yan of Singapore in women's singles competition to advance to the quarterfinals of Badminton Asia Championships being played in Manila in Philippines. Sindhu won 21-16, 21-16 to set up a clash against third seed Chinese He Bingjie. It was curtains for world champion silver winner Kitambi Srikanth and London Olympic bronze medalist Saina Nehwal in the Badminton Asia Championships. Srikanth, seeded 7th, couldn't step up his game when it mattered, going down narrowly to China's Wang Hongyang, 16-21, 21-17, 17-21 in a men's singles. In the women's singles, Saina lost 21-12, 7-21, 13-21 to 22-year-old Chinese Wang Ziyi. And in football, Liverpool dominated from the start and defeated Villarreal 2-0 in the Champions League semi-final first leg at home. The two quick-fire second-half goals has put Liverpool on the verge of a third Champions League final in 5 seasons. Liverpool manager Jurgen Klopp, however, has insisted the job was not done yet. Liverpool will travel to Spain for the second leg to be played on May 4th. Moving to tennis now, Alejandro Davidovich won his opening match to advance to the quarterfinals of Australian Open with 6-3, 7-6 win over Spanish compatriot Bernabé Zapata. After receiving a first-round bye, it was Alejandro's first match since he reached the final of the Monte Carlo Masters, which included a win over world number 1 Novak Djokovic. Danish teenager Holger Rune sealed the biggest win of his career at the Munich Open, outclassing top seed Alexander 6-3, 6-2 for a spot in the quarterfinals of the ATP 250 clay court tournament. The 18-year-old Rune broke world number 3 4 times in a flawless performance for his first win over a player in the ATP top 10. And before we sign off, a relook at the headlines now. Efforts to remove Aswa from entire Northeast, says Prime Minister at rally in Assam. Last 8 years have seen 80% reduction in violence in the region. Ukraine war has revealed the significance of self-reliance in defence sector, says Rajnath Singh at Naval Commanders Conference. Emphasises synergy between the 3 wings of India's armed forces. Parliamentary Committee on Finance to summon officials of tech companies Google, Facebook, Twitter and Amazon on competitive conduct. Severe heat wave warning for 5 states. Mercury crosses 45 degrees in many places in North India. Pork crisis deepens in many states. Coal Minister allays concerns over coal availability. UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres arrives in Ukraine for talks with President Zelensky, visits war-devastated areas in Kiev. Well, that's all we had for you in this edition. Thanks for watching and stay tuned to Sansad TV. Namaskar.